Evil Earth puppets face off against evil puppets from another realm. Place your bets. Hi guys, so if you've been following the channel, you'll know that I've already reviewed the first 3 Puppetmaster films. I did them quite close together as well earlier this year. But then I suspended the review series, partly because I didn't really enjoy the 3rd film. It was a massive drop-off in quality for me from the first 2. But also, and I guess this is the main reason actually, you can't rent Puppetmaster films in the UK. You have to subscribe to Full Moon Entertainment, which I don't really want to do. It's either that or buy expensive Blu-rays and DVDs on eBay. So I decided not to do any more. I wasn't sure if it would be a temporary thing or whether that would be it for me and Puppetmaster. So I guess around about a month passed, and then it suddenly dawned on me that actually time had healed and I was ready to get back into it, and yeah, I could face another Puppetmaster. So I went out and bought number 4 on Blu-ray, and here we are. So to give you more of an idea of the story for this one, it's a bit of a wild plot, it has to be said. So there's some kind of evil god called Sutekh. I don't know if he lives in another realm or if he actually lives in Egypt, because he's described as an Egyptian god on the back of the Blu-ray box. But it's come to his attention that some scientists in America are getting close to creating artificial intelligence, and Sutekh doesn't like this. He wants to be the sole entity in the whole universe who is capable of creating life, reanimating life. I don't know how he finds out that these scientists are doing what they're doing. He's just got some kind of telepathic connection with everybody in the world, I guess. So how he goes about solving this little issue that he has, he's got these 3 disciples in his throne room. They look like the Tusken Raiders from the Star Wars films. So these 3 disciples, they walk to this portal in the middle of Sutekh's throne room, and they transfer their souls into 3 totems, which are basically puppets. You with me so far? These 3 puppets then go to America to try and take out these 3 scientists, and of course these puppets are the exact same height and weight as the puppets that we know from the first 3 Puppetmaster films, so we can have an equal-ish contest in this. It's lucky that Sutekh doesn't have any kind of strength behind him. You know, if he was able to send any kind of decent-sized monster or creature to America, then it wouldn't be much of a film, but he just doesn't have much strength behind him. He's only got these 3 totems, seemingly. Now, the plot at this point gets really deficient. We haven't even got to the bad part of the plot yet. What Sutekh does have in America is some kind of man in black working for him who's able to deliver the totems to the addresses of the 3 scientists where they're working. Who this guy is, I don't know. It's never explained. But if you just picture the man in black from Halloween 5, then you're halfway there. Also a bit weird is the fact that one of these scientists just happens to live at the Boyega Hotel. Now, this guy has no idea about Toulon or the puppets from the first 3 movies once Puppetmaster 4 begins. So it just seems to be a bit of a weird coincidence that he would just happen to have a caretaker role at the Boyega Hotel, unless I'm missing something, but for me it's a plot hole. Also, the ending to Puppetmaster 2 is completely ignored, seemingly. So at the end of number 2, we had this Camille character who took the puppets on some kind of road trip. But, I mean, I'm presuming that Puppetmaster 4 must surely follow on from number 2 chronologically, but at the start of number 4, all the puppets are back at the hotel, and Camille has somehow vanished into thin air. She's gone. So I feel like we've missed out on some kind of short story out on the freeway where Camille, for some reason, ended up having to turn the car around and going back to the Boyega. It's never explained. Maybe later in the series they'll do some kind of flashback or something. We've also got Torch missing from Puppetmaster 4. So did he die out on the freeway somewhere? I don't know, but he's not in this movie, though weirdly he's on the Blu-ray menu. If you boot up the Blu-ray, there's like a still picture of Sutekh and all the puppets, and Torch is there, but he's not in the movie. What gives? One puppet we do have, though, is Six Shooter, which is just as bizarre as Torch not being there, because he was in Puppetmaster 3, the prequel, but he wasn't in Puppetmaster 1 and 2. I just presumed that he must have died before Puppetmaster 1, but it turns out that he was actually in a suitcase all the way through Puppetmaster 1 and 2, and he just never came out, because here in number 4 he does come out. It's a bit strange that he wouldn't come out of the suitcase in Puppetmaster 2, especially because we had Toulon reanimated at that point. Surely he would have got Six Shooter out. He would have known that he was there, and Six Shooter is one of the more dangerous puppets. So you've got quite a lot of plot holes and things that don't quite add up when you really evaluate the story at the beginning of Puppetmaster 4, but it is such a zany, wacky plot that I guess you're just meant to ignore all that and just go with it. Jeff Burr is the director of this. I think I've got that name right. The only film I've seen of his before this is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, my least favourite film in that franchise. So when I found out that he was directing this, it didn't fill me with confidence, but I'm always happy to give somebody a second chance. Maybe this would be Burr's big chance to finally impress me. So I'll say at this point that I was actually somewhat impressed by this film, somewhat. It seems to know that it has an absolutely ludicrous story, and it doesn't take itself too serious. This is an absolutely off-the-wall, zany horror film. It's not quite a black comedy, but it's getting there. It really tries to have fun. I don't think the third film did this enough. It took itself a little bit too seriously, but this one is bonkers in quite a few good places. I was on board with this actually from the very first scene because I liked the look of Sutek in his throne room. I had an instinct in my head at that point that I was going to somewhat enjoy this, and that was the case. If we skip forward to the end of the film, there's this great new puppet called Decapitron. In every Puppetmaster film up to this point, there has been at least one new puppet, and I hope they carry that going for the next few sequels, because it is something that I personally look forward to when I'm putting a Puppetmaster film on for the first time. When I heard the name Decapitron, I did think that this guy was going to be someone who could cut people's heads off maybe, but it turns out that Decapitron actually decapitates himself. So if he wants to attack, he takes his head off and replaces it with some kind of sci-fi helmet that fires lightning bolts, and he uses this to take out the final totem in the movie. But the fact that he did this with this silly looking helmet really made me enjoy that final scene. The way that it's been designed, it looks like something out of a really cheesy episode of Doctor Who from the 50s or something, and it does beg the question, why does he just not make this helmet his permanent head and just put some eyes in it? I do wonder, does he have more helmets in his arsenal that he can go to? Maybe we'll see more of Decapitron in the later films, and I hope that's the case. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with him. I feel like there's more to see. The other puppets seem to revere him as like their MVP, you know, the puppet that they get out of the cupboard when the shit really hits the fan, because he only comes into play in the last sort of 15-20 minutes of the movie, and he does seem to be a little bit taller than the other puppets. It begs the question again, similar to Six Shooter, why didn't they get this thing out in previous movies, Puppetmaster 1 and 2? The totems take some real punishment in this film. The last one gets zapped by lightning bolts. There's another one who gets like melted with acid. Another one gets stabbed by a tunneler. They really do suffer some punishment, but it's really delightful. In terms of the puppets, the main puppets, I like what they've done with Jester in this one. I've thought to myself all the way through these films so far that they should make him the comic relief, given the fact that he doesn't have an obvious MO to kill people like the other puppets do. There are at least 2 times during this movie where the camera focuses in on Jester and he does the funniest looks. He does 2 completely different looks that both had me laughing. So I think they're making better use of Jester as the series goes on. There's also this moment in this where Rick, the main protagonist, he plays a game of Laser Quest with Tunneler and Pinhead. In the UK, we tend to call the game Laser Quest. Maybe in other parts of the world, it's something different. It's where you like fire pretend lasers at each other, and you've got like vests that rack up points and stuff. I mean, there's no vest in this. Rick and the puppets are just like pretending to fire at each other. But I found that a really, really funny scene that Tunneler and Pinhead would willfully just get involved in this. The Rick character actually is great in Puppetmaster 4. He's just really fun. He's very happy-go-lucky. He doesn't let the horror of the situation that unfolds in this film get to him. I just really, really like the character. He's played by Gordon Currie, who I remember from Friday the 13th Part 8. Now, not a very popular Jason film, but with me, it's one of my favorites. And I'm not going to go into the reasons why in this video, but I absolutely love Friday Part 8, and I'm very familiar with all the characters in that film because I've seen it like 100 times. And Gordon Currie plays, I believe, a character called Miles in that film, but he's the one character in the whole movie who's never named, but he's constantly there, and he plays a funny little bit. So to see him move on from that and come into Puppetmaster 4 and play the lead character here, I'm actually quite thrilled to see him take on a role like this. He's really good. So now it's time for some negatives. I did say that this was a somewhat good film. I didn't say that it was a great film. So I'm a little bit concerned that the main puppets continue to be the good guys. This is now 2 films in a row. And I don't think that that's going to change for Puppetmaster 5, because as I understand it, Puppetmaster 4 and 5 were filmed back to back. It's meant to be like one long storyline with a very obvious break at the end of Puppetmaster 4, so that would make it 3 films in a row where the main puppets are good. I kind of miss them being evil and terrifying like they were in Puppetmaster 1 and 2, so I hope that this isn't something that's now going to be permanently like this for the whole 13, 14 movies, whatever it is now. I'd also say that the human characters in this are pretty poor for the most part, with the exception of Rick. He's great, but all of his friends that turn up at the Boyega are not so good. Rick's main buddy is an absolute dipshit from the minute that he arrives. He's constantly thinking of how he can steal his friend's artificial intelligence data. At one point, he goes up to his bedroom with his girlfriend, an absolutely gorgeous girl, and you'd think, being in this exotic location, he'd only have one thing on his mind, this guy, but no, while she sat like 5 yards from him, possibly just wanting him to try and get her clothes off, he's pacing up and down with a cigarette, scheming and plotting about how he can get one over his friend. This guy's just horrible. He does die, thankfully. As for his girlfriend, a fantastic looking girl, but I could not get a handle on her character. She's a medium, a bit like the medium from Puppetmaster 1, but I felt that character in the original movie was very well written, very deep. This girl, not so much. I just couldn't get into her head as to what she was even thinking most of the time. The other girl, by the way, makes absolutely no impression. The one who looks like she's dressed for tennis, Rick's girlfriend. So most of the supporting cast, pretty poor. It's just Rick who makes an impression when it comes to the human characters. Another criticism I would have is the fact that the human deaths in this are just bad. I mean, it's all cutaways. You hardly see anything. We get some great carnage with the totems, but the carnage with the humans is just non-existent. So there's quite a contrast that. And if I had one more tiny little complaint, it would be the fact that even though it's great to be back at the Boyega, I don't feel like the interiors are up to much. It all feels like the same 2 or 3 rooms. The last time we were in this location was Puppetmaster 2, and there was a lot more variety. There were outdoor scenes at the farm and the beach and in the woods, and even inside the hotel it felt like we see more rooms. This time around there's not as much, given the fact that from the outside it looks like such a massive place, but I imagine that this is kind of down to the budget. This almost certainly would have had a lower budget than Puppetmaster 2. And remember as well that Puppetmaster 4 and 5 were filmed back to back, presumably as part of one pooled budget, so cut that in half and call it the budget for Puppetmaster 4. It was probably quite small. So let's take another quick look at the Blu-ray before we wrap up. Here it is. It's one of those that comes with both a DVD and a Blu-ray, and I noticed Torch is actually on the front picture. He's not in the movie, but he makes the Blu-ray cover. I don't really get that. In terms of features, there's a commentary by director Jeff Burr, and being the highly dedicated YouTuber that I am, I sat through this commentary track last night. It was a pretty good listen, actually. Much better than Charles Band's attempt at a commentary that he did for like Puppetmaster 1 or 2. I can't remember which one it was, but as nice a guy as Charles Band is, his commentaries just put me to sleep. Jeff Burr was much better, and I think my opinion of him as a director has definitely gone up a little bit after this film, because I kind of enjoyed this. It had a good sense of humour. Not so much Texas Chainsaw 3. That was just bleak, depressing and boring and completely lacking in invention. But let's go to the Bag of Terror and find out what sort of score Puppetmaster 4 is going to get. One, 2, 3 bloody axes out of 5. I've possibly been a little bit generous with the score. My first instinct was 2.5, but talking about the movie today has really just maybe bumped it up slightly. It's a very, very fun film, and given where we were with number 3, I think this is a massive improvement. It's still nowhere near the level of 1 and 2, but I kind of feel we're definitely back on the track of acceptable with these, and I'm definitely going to do Puppetmaster 5 a lot quicker than I did this one. In fact, I'm going to put my order in on eBay to get a Blu-ray as soon as this video is done. So that's it. That was my review of Puppetmaster 4. I will catch you all again another time. Cheerio, bye-bye.